Welcome, all you sinners and sodomites, to episode 16 of Bible Stories for Atheists.
Atheists?
Where?
Get them!
I am Josh.
I'm Linz.
And we are your guides to the ludicrously lofty stories, literally, literarily, littering the Bible.
That was an extra long vocal burn at the end.
Yeah.
You're gonna hit you're gonna hit 80 and your voice is gonna be gone, and I'm gonna play you back like 40 years worth of Bible stories for atheists and be like, really? You don't know why? You fucking fucked up your vocal cords.
Just
trying to be sexy on the mic.
Talking through one of those voice boxes they give for former smokers.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
Just
a vocoder or whatever.
Yeah.
Now I have even more vocal burn.
So in this episode, we get into the Sermon on the Mount.
10.
Yeah. we go through
or just a level place.
Or a
out.
level place. Yeah.
Two different arenas there.
Yep. So we only get two versions of this, and we'll get into all that. But we go through the Sermon on the Mount.
10.
And that basically lays out the philosophy of Jesus and stuff like that. We got a couple random stories that we talk about. And then we get to one big story where we overturn what is a big traditional belief about a major character, well, a semi-major character in the story of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a mind-blowing thing when you actually find out.
Yeah, you kind of get to hear me come to it logically as we walk through it, where I'm piecing the pieces together.
Yeah.
Piecing the puzzle together. I'm putting the parts together. And realizing that what I thought was wrong for a really long time.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't want the fucking... I made myself laugh and then forgot what I was talking about.
It was very interesting how it turns out. So strap in, strap on for episode 16, Mary and her Nards. Last we left off, Jesus has mainly been healing people.
Right.
It's been a lot of that. He sent out the 12 apostles.
To start healing people as well?
Yeah, to do healings, driving out demons, and to, go on a missions trip all around Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And he made this claim that before they'll be done, the Son of Man will return or something along those lines, essentially saying the end times will come before all of Israel knows about Jesus. And
that doesn't seem... He just didn't understand how time works.
Right. Yeah. I mean, clearly that didn't work out. But then the question I have, obviously, is like, all right, so he sent out those 12. Are they going to keep showing up, though, throughout the next stories? Like, because they're in the rest of the Gospels, too.
Oh.
And so they're not really sent out.
Yeah, they're still with him?
Yeah, it seems like it. Although in the next few stories, we're not really going to hear much about them, but who knows? So I've mentioned this a couple times now, but the stories that we covered over the last two episodes, this is one big discrepancy, is that those stories happen before the Sermon on the Mount in Luke, but they happen after the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew.
Okay.
And so in this episode, we're getting into the Sermon on the Mount.
All right, 10. Mount 10.
Yeah. And really, it's not even on a mountain.
It's a hill.
It's
like the Sermon on the Hill.
Well, no, it's like we'll see. It's on a mountainside.
Okay.
In one of the Gospels, and in the other Gospel, it's not on a mountain at all.
Ah.
So in Matthew, we're going from chapter 12 and jumping all the way back to chapter 5 because of this.
Oh, right. Because you're trying to stay.
We're using a timeline that favors Luke arbitrarily.
Yes.
Yeah. And then we get into what's probably some of my favorite verses
Okay.
in the Bible is the Beatitudes, which we talked
Beatitudes.
about a little bit before. It's the blessed are's.
Okay.
You know,
Why is it called the Beatitude?
because I think Beatitudes means something like blessed or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Because one thing that I was surprised to find out is there's actually two pretty different versions of the Beatitudes. There's Luke and Matthew's.
Okay.
And Luke has the Beatitudes and then the woes. So blessed are's.
And woe.
And then woe is.
Ah,
Woe to's, actually.
right.
And I figured we'd cover that one first. And I should cover this too. Sermon on the Mount, huge piece of Jesus's message. You know, it lays out a lot of his philosophies and stuff like that. Only in two of the Gospels.
Right.
Only in Luke and Matthew. So most of what we covered today is only going to be in those.
I gotcha. Okay.
So Luke 6, 20 through 26 is what we're covering here. Luke has this happen literally right after Jesus heals the multitudes, which was the last thing we talked about.
Right.
So Jesus is on a, quote, level place, unquote, which does not sound much like a mount.
No.
You know, it doesn't say anything about a mountainside.
Plateau.
Yeah. So he's just healed a bunch of people, just drove out a bunch of demons and stuff like that. And then we get, looking at his disciples, he said, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God.
Okay.
Blessed are you who hunger now, for you will be satisfied. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, when they exclude you and insult you and reject your name as evil because of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, because great is your reward in heaven, for that is how their ancestors treated the prophets. But woe to you who are rich, for you have already received your comfort. Woe to you who are well fed now, for you will go hungry. Woe to you who laugh now, for you will mourn and weep.
Well, that sucks.
Woe to you when everyone speaks well of you, for that is how their ancestors treated the false prophets." So that's Luke's version of the Beatitudes, and then he has also the woes.
I don't
it's
like
weird.
it. I don't like it much.
Yeah.
You say it's your favorite, but I don't.
So I realized I totally forgot that these were there's two different versions of this, and I realized I favor the Matthew version.
I gotcha.
So this is the one I don't care for this one either. So what do you think about it?
Well, first of all, it sounds like a bunch of rich people got together and were like, how can we make poor people feel better about their lives?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Well, their lives suck now, but they're going to be okay with it because they know that when they die, they're going to go to heaven and get all of this shit. And they're going to think that we're not going to because we're rich and good looking and
Right.
you know, all that stuff. So it sounds like a really great way to keep like peasants from revolting.
Right. It kind of does. Yeah, I can see how like it could, if you are poor and stuff, it can give you comfort
Yeah.
to be in this, but it doesn't really lay out any virtues
Yeah.
that you can practice.
Like what's poor?
Yeah.
And like now because I laugh, I'm going to cry when I die. Like
Right.
that seems fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Like because I was happy during my life means I'm going to have a terrible afterlife.
Right.
Well, that seems real shitty.
Yeah. And it doesn't seem congruent with like the rest of the scriptures and stuff like that with the message of Jesus.
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, obviously, if that's supposed to be like a big part of his teaching, like there's nobody, like hardly anybody today is going
Practicing
to heaven. Yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna get into a bunch of stuff where it's like, nope, Christians are just totally ignoring this too. And yeah.
But again, I mean, I guess it's nice, like if you're poor or hungry, to think that like it's not for nothing.
Right.
But it doesn't make sense. Especially, I don't understand the whole false prophet.
Yeah.
thing.
It's the idea. I think the idea is obviously he's saying like, you know, people mistreated prophets back in the Old Testament and stuff that we haven't really covered on this podcast.
Okay.
If there's actual standing in the scriptures about it.
Right.
But the idea is like, oh, this is what you're like. You're like a good prophet. You know, if you're mistreated by people for my sake, you know.
What if you're a real shitty person, though?
Right.
And people talk shit about you because you deserve to be talked shit about.
Right. That's what bothered me about this too, is it makes it seem like that's a goal to achieve.
Right.
Persecution should be a goal you try and strive for, and it isn't.
No.
Because if you're doing that, then you're obviously not doing a good job of explaining why Christianity is good for the world.
Right.
You know?
Well, and like, it's such a blanket statement. Jesus was persecuted in the Bible, right? You can be persecuted for your beliefs, but you can also be persecuted because you fucking deserve it.
Right. Because you're an asshole.
Yeah, man. Like, but if like you're a good person and people don't talk shit about you, or like, I don't know, don't talk about you at all.
Right.
Because you have not an extraordinary life.
Right.
But yet you're happy and, maybe you laugh a couple times.
Yeah.
Like, so now your afterlife is going to suck because you lived a very ordinary kind of humor-filled life.
Right. Yeah.
It's
there's
bullshit.
There's a lot of poor people out there who have very happy, like humor-filled lives, you know, and I think that's something to strive for. Like even if you are not financially well positioned, still trying to find a good outlook on life.
Sure.
That should be what you're striving for.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So again, it just leads me back to being like, well, this wasn't written by Jesus. Some noble people got together and were like, our peasants are going to revolt.
Yeah.
We just switched them to this religion. What can we do to keep them from revolting, to make them feel like being poor is a good thing?
Yeah. Yeah. Something to strive for. Yeah. You want to be poor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you want to be hungry.
Right. And we'll write this other half because then it'll sound like it's against us. But we all know that that's not true.
Right. Yeah. So the Matthew version has similarities to it, but to me, well, I'll let you make up your mind on this. This is Matthew 5, 1 through 10. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on the mountainside and sat down. So there's a mountainside.
Right.
His disciples came to him and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. And blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven."
Well, there's big differences there.
Between the two?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
The first one just says poor.
Right.
And this one says poor in spirit.
Yeah. And I'm not really sure what he was going after with poor in spirit.
Yeah.
But.
And then hunger for.
Those who hunger and thirst for righteousness.
For righteousness.
Yes.
Not food.
Yeah.
Righteousness. So there's more of them too.
Yes.
And there's no, okay, all of these people are getting blessings, but all of these people are getting.
Yeah, there's no woes.
No woes.
In this one. Yeah.
No woes.
Which is like makes sense because in Luke, it's all mirrored, right? It's literally like the same things, just the opposite of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So what's the point of like really doing that?
Pointing it out. I mean, these seem better. This one is more like you'll get rewarded for having a good attitude.
Yeah. This one like calls out much more virtues of things that you actually should strive for, I think. Like there's the poor in spirit one, which I'm not sure. Like to me, that could just mean poor.
Right.
Like that's how I think a lot of people would interpret it. You could also think that they are mourning, although that's called out in the next one. But I kind of feel like those first two are actually like comforting ones. Like if this is, if you identify with this, know that I'm on your side kind of thing. But the rest of them are actually like, there's meek, hunger and thirsting for righteousness, being merciful, they're being pure in heart, being peacemakers, and if you're getting persecuted for your desire for righteousness. They seem, which is also another comforting one.
Some of those seem like opposed to each other, though. How can you be meek and also hunger for righteousness?
Meek, I would take to mean, and this is up to interpretation.
It means quiet and submissive.
It can be. I would probably more define it in this context as like being a humble person, which you could take to be submissive.
Well, then
but
he should say
you don't
humble and not meek.
Yeah.
Because the dictionary definition of meek is quiet and submissive,
Okay.
not humble.
Yeah. I've always just took it to mean like you're not an asshole to people. You know, you don't need to be boastful. You don't need
Right.
to, draw attention to yourself and stuff like that.
Yeah, that only works for so many situations, though. It sounds like a way to oppress people a little bit.
It could be.
It's kind of like a tortoise and the hare scenario a little bit, right?
Okay.
So the tortoise takes his time and just goes on his little race.
Yeah.
And the rabbit is like obnoxious and boastful and takes a nap halfway through and then loses.
Right.
Well, it sounds to me like what they're saying is like, just hang in there. All of these obnoxious people will die someday. And then all of you quiet, submissive people will have run of the earth.
Right.
How is that going to work, though? How are a bunch of submissive people going to run a fucking earth?
Well, ultimately they're not going to have to because like they'll all be in heaven,
But they said inherit the earth,
Yeah.
not the heaven.
It's a good point. Like, really, like because what the fuck does that even mean?
Right.
Because, and this kind of comes down to what actually happens when the end times come, because some people, like I know Jehovah's Witnesses, think you get resurrected and then God makes a paradise of the earth.
Okay.
And there's only 144,000 who will go to heaven.
Actual heaven. And then the rest live on earth paradise.
Earth paradise, yeah. And I don't know if this has been also the thought of Catholicism or anything like that,
I don't know much about that.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like that could be what it's kind of going after, or more obviously that's where those beliefs got built up from.
Right.
But
could you imagine being on an earth that was just run by a bunch of meek people? Nothing would ever fucking get done.
Yeah, it could be. I don't know.
Have you ever worked with a
that.
group of like people who can't make decisions or like are willing to just be like, whatever you decide? If you have 10 people and all of them are like, well, whatever you decide.
Yeah, like this. So this kind of goes to like, what is the ideal Christian, right? Like, from my perspective of when I was, not to
ask questions.
But it's not that. It's like, I don't think it means you're indecisive or you can't be a leader or anything like that. It just means you need to be focused on the good of everyone and not your own, what's good for you, and being ambitious and stuff like that. Ambition is not good, which like there are plenty of good arguments for saying ambition is a good character trait, but it also leads to corruption too. It can lead to corruption. And that's the thing, is like none of this stuff actually is good across the board.
No.
Like it's good sometimes,
right?
It's good for some people.
Yeah.
Like there are plenty of people out there where I'm like, I wish they were following this.
Sure.
I wish they would shut the fuck up, and they would just be a meek Christian,
right?
But
I don't know. I think I'm stuck on the whole meekness of the thing.
Yeah,
it's one of the, like, I've heard that it's one of the ones that people espouse most frequently.
Blessed are the meek.
Yeah, for they will inherit the earth. I am not meek, but that doesn't make me a bad person.
Right.
And I just wish they were more specific in what they're talking about. Do they mean like meek in spirituality? So like you're not out there, you're supposed to be submissive.
Being an asshole about your beliefs, saying they're superior.
Or you need to be submissive to like God and Jesus and things like that. What were the rest of them? Meek.
Hunger and thirsting for righteousness.
Yep. Okay.
Merciful, pure in heart, being peacemakers.
Right.
And blessed are those who are persecuted for being
right.
for righteousness. One thing I really like about this version, though, is it's not about being persecuted for your beliefs in Christ specifically. It's being persecuted for your desire for righteousness.
Right.
Which can be regardless of faith.
Yeah.
You can be somebody, you can be Gandhi or something like that,
Sure.
and be striving for something better for people and get persecuted for it.
Right.
But peacemakers, I feel like Christians have kind of let go of.
Oh my God.
A lot of
the beginning.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Crusades? I mean, not remember them.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
I mean, there's examples of that recently. If you look at our own state's history with like Christian missions and the Native American population, the shit that went on with those fucking schools, definitely not making peace there.
Right. And I mean, fucking January 6th.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
People storm the Capitol, beat the shit out of police with American flags and stuff like that. They get into the Senate chamber and pray what I can only describe as an aggressively Christian prayer in the Senate chamber. All right, you're not being peacemakers, you know?
No.
You're not following, you're definitely not being meek.
Right.
You're definitely not hungering and thirsting for righteousness or being merciful or being pure in heart.
I would argue that they do think that they were hungry for righteousness. That's a matter of opinion.
Yeah, I mean, but you're definitely not being meek.
Right.
You're definitely not being merciful. And you're definitely, I mean, I don't think you're being pure in heart when you're beating cops and stuff like that.
No. If you were to use that as like a grading rubric for like admittance into heaven, I would certainly get into heaven before a lot of people would.
Yeah.
And I don't even believe in it.
Right.
That's fucked up.
Right.
That's real fucked up. And it totally is against the whole argument that you need religion to have some sort of fucking morality.
Right. So we've got a few other topics that kind of come out throughout the Sermon on the Mount. One is love your enemies. The Matthew version of this is not really love your enemies, but this is what the timeline put together with the Luke version of it. Matthew's version just says, blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way, they persecuted the prophets who were before you, which is kind of similar to other stuff we heard from Matthew or from Luke. Again, it should not be a goal that to get persecuted. You know, if you are persecuted, then I guess you can take comfort in this, but you really shouldn't make it a goal.
It really sets people up to just assume that people are going to persecute them for their religion specifically, which isn't a great way to run a religion.
It's incentivizing bad behavior.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there who claim to be persecuted for their beliefs when really in reality, no one gives a fuck.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many Christians I've said that are like, the Catholic Church is under attack. And I'm like, well.
They have persecution fetishes.
Yeah. Or like, oh, everyone's talking about all of these other people who are struggling, but what about Christians? This is the time in society when Christians are, being persecuted the most. And I'm like, A, no, it's not.
No. No.
At all. 0%. Please go back to school.
Yeah.
B,
way overrepresented in government.
No one really cares.
Nobody's committing a war on Christmas.
No.
Yeah.
No, all of this is all just bullshit that people are creating so that they feel persecuted.
Right.
It's fucked up.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? I just now thought of, nobody's ever said that there's a war on Easter. Why not?
Yeah.
Like, why is it Christmas? Is it because of the gifts?
Well, because
I think it's because
when Easter rolls around, you don't say Happy Holidays. You say Happy Easter.
That's true. Yeah, there's no Happy Holidays for Easter.
But because specifically some people say Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas, there's a war on Christmas. But Hanukkah's been around since long before fucking Christmas has.
Yeah.
And like, who the fuck cares?
Right.
Happy Holidays across the board.
Yeah. There's also New Year in there. There's a lot of reasons to say it. But yeah, like but I also kind of feel like it's like Christians just like Christmas more than Easter.
Easter has slowly turned into like a mini gift giving extravaganza, though.
It has it? Like, I mean, like you're giving like the Easter baskets and stuff like that.
I know lots of families, because it's spring, lots of families do like bikes and shit for Easter.
Oh, really?
The baskets have gotten huge and extravagant.
Yeah.
And instead of doing like the hard boiled eggs that you search for, people are doing like the plastic eggs, and they'll put money and candy and shit in them. And it just becomes this whole huge, big, commercialized thing. Yeah. And more than anything, Easter is a religious holiday.
Right.
More than Christmas, I would say.
Right. Really, considering we don't even know like when Jesus was born or anything like that. And it's not really like okay, he was born.
Yeah.
You know, big whoop. Everybody is born.
Yeah.
You know, but then like the Easter is actually about him dying for your sins and everything.
And coming back to fucking life.
Yeah, resurrecting.
If you're gonna celebrate something,
yeah, why is
that's
that not the bigger
impressive.
one? Yeah,
So,
that's a
yeah.
good point. Anywho, so
we
that
should start a war on Easter on this podcast.
I know, right? Let's declare a war on Easter.
Yes.
Let's start saying happy holidays around
Oh my
Easter.
gosh.
So that was Matthew's version of love your enemies, which wasn't really about loving your
No,
enemies.
not at all.
And then there's Luke's version, which is much more the classical version. Here's just a few quotes from it. Love your enemies, do good to those who hate you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. Turn the other cheek. you
Right.
know.
For them to also hit.
Yeah, really, it's offering it up. Like if that's what they want to do.
They're really setting up a very pacifist movement with these.
Yes. Yeah.
Which makes sense, I guess. Again, because I fall back to the people setting these rules up to keep people under control.
Right.
And if you're teaching people to turn the other cheek in the face of, actual physical violence,
Right.
then, that works out for people.
It can, although, I mean, it was an effective strategy for Martin Luther King Jr.
Right.
A lot of his philosophy around their protesting came from this. Although famously, as my understanding goes, Martin Luther King Jr. by the end of his life was kind of feeling like he should have gone more towards the Malcolm X route, and Malcolm X was feeling like he should have gone more towards the Martin Luther King Jr. route by the end of
It's
their
almost
lives.
like you need a combination of both and need to analyze each situation and react accordingly.
Right.
It's great to say turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
Especially in like petty situations or things where like getting upset is not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I famously, at least famously in this household, suffer from severe road rage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you cut me off on the road, know that I've called you a cunt.
Yeah.
And wished I could ram you with my car.
Yeah. And has made everybody else tense up because is this going to be the time she does it?
Which isn't turning the other cheek.
No.
But in those situations.
I mean, you get mad at people who don't do anything at all. Who are like not meaning any offense whatsoever.
I know.
And just like, oh, they missed their turn.
Yeah. I mean, you need an outlet, I guess is what I'm saying. And so I don't turn the other cheek in those scenarios, but I feel comfortable in those scenarios doing that because I know, like, literally the only person it's affecting is me and whoever else happens to be in the car with me, which I've been told a lot of people don't enjoy.
It's really weird when you're the passenger and you get road rage.
I'm not even driving and I get angry.
I'm just keeping us alive.
But my point being, like, I would never behave like that to somebody face to face. So it really is like weighing out the scenario and choosing your reaction based on that.
Right. Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back, which I don't know any Christians who do that. Like, if somebody steals your car, you're going to want to get it back.
Well, I mean, if you were on our Ring feed, you would know that people just walking into somebody's yard is enough to get somebody fucking pissed off and want to call the cops on you.
Yeah.
Let alone stealing stuff from you.
Yeah.
Or like all the Amazon packages that get stolen.
Yeah.
Nobody's like, oh, well, I guess that's theirs now.
Right. Yeah. I'll pay for it.
Right.
Yeah. Do unto others as you would have them do to you. The golden rule.
Yeah. Well, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's pretty solid. It's hard to argue that one.
Right. He does make a really good point about there being nothing impressive about only loving others who love you or doing good to those who do good to you. It says, quote, even sinners love those who love them, unquote.
Well, that's pretty neat, actually. There's nothing impressive about only loving people who love you back.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, you should love everybody, even if they don't love you back.
Right.
Well, I love everybody.
Even if they don't love you back.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
There's
a line to it.
I might not love serial killers or rapists, but for the most part.
Yeah. I think at some point, it's hard to really define love because at some point it might become just compassion for the fact that they're obviously damaged people.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that's true. Love doesn't necessarily mean I'm okay with you as a person.
Right.
Love could be like, okay, you're a serial killer. I love you and you're dangerous, so you have to go to jail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I love the people who you're trying to kill too.
Right.
So,
yeah. And you're a danger to yourself and others, so therefore you need to be put somewhere so you're not.
Yeah.
And that is love,
Right.
I guess.
Kind of.
Right?
You can have compassion. You can say, like, I don't want you to be tortured when you're in prison.
Oh, yeah.
And things like that.
I mean, there are some people I think should be tortured.
I know. That's the tough part about this. I kind of do feel like there's a line where it kind of strays into unhealthy.
Yeah.
And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? So you should lend to people who you don't expect repayment from.
Oh.
You know, like even if you don't think they can repay
Right.
you, you should still lend to them, you know, which love to see some Christian banks out there do that,
Right?
you know.
And but does it say what happens if they don't?
No. You're just supposed to let it go. You're supposed to be generous, you know?
Oh.
And be
Well,
a
why
generous
isn't our
person.
society built on these tenets?
I know. Why isn't anything Christian built on this stuff?
Listen, all
Yeah.
you Christians who listen to this podcast, I need money.
Yeah.
Send $20 to P.O. Box. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'll pay you back, I promise.
Or will I?
Well,
Doesn't matter. You have to send it.
And hearing stuff like this
Again, this
makes
is how
me-
you become poor. This is
Yeah.
the path to attaining that
right
poorness.
giving your
you know?
your stuff to other people.
Yeah.
Not being selfish. It makes me really angry about Christianity the more I hear about this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe that Christianity has operated like that in a very long time.
Ever.
I mean,
I
there's
don't
some
think it
people.
ever has.
There's probably people out there whose lives, like they operate their lives under this.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like
They try to.
people
Yeah.
who give away all of their money and things like that. But like as a whole,
Yeah.
is not happening.
No. And also, when you think about it, like how far away from this is socialism, you know? Like,
Well, Jesus
Where-
was a socialist.
yeah, like, but like, this is what I mean is like, if everybody is giving their money to each other
Right.
to help out those who are in need and things like that, that's just socialism. Like, that's
Yeah.
just, you know, everybody paying in to make sure everybody has what they need.
Right.
You know, it's one of those things that like a lot of religious right Christians hate socialism and the entire idea of it and everything, but then are not actually living up to any of these commandments. But the last thing I was going to hit was if you do these things and everything, Jesus says, then your reward will be great and you will be children of the Most High because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful just like your Father is merciful.
So wait, are there tears in heaven?
Tears in heaven?
Is that what I mean? Like tears, like the song "Tears in Heaven," like tears, like
Oh,
TIERS.
Yeah.
Tears,
like, yeah.
not Eric Clapton song. Tears in Heaven.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not uncommon for Jesus, like going through this stuff, for him to talk about like being least in heaven or being most in heaven
Right.
and stuff like that. And it does sound as if there's a hierarchy
Huh.
in heaven, but it's never explicitly called out. You know, if there actually is
That
like,
would be the sort of thing I would be very interested in
Yeah.
learning about.
yeah, if you're a low class person in heaven, how much would that kind of suck?
Right?
You know,
I mean, at least you're not in hell.
right,
But like, is it really heaven if you're still like a lower class citizen?
right, yeah, and you can never upgrade.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be nice if there's like some actual details about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's almost like it's completely made up.
Right, exactly. It's almost as if you can read into it whatever you want to believe
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
A few random things that come up throughout Matthew 5 and 6 here. Jesus didn't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. So keep the laws of the Old Testament. He says that anyone who sets aside the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. so low tier. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. So hopefully he wasn't talking about slavery.
Well, we're teaching them.
Yeah, yeah.
What would mean slavery?
So he's saying you have to practice all the commands of the Old Testament, And it's like,
there's the
I
slavery
wonder if he's
one.
talking about slavery,
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
You shouldn't just not murder people. You shouldn't even be angry with people. But I tell you, going back to your road rage.
Uh-oh. I wanted to murder people.
Yeah. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of fire of hell.
Oh, man.
I mean, how often do you say you fool?
I mean, I think that's just old timey
Specifically
speak
that
for
phrase.
cunt.
Yeah. Anyone who says you cunt will be. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift. One thing this reminds me of is there's this holiday called Yom Kippur.
Okay.
And
Yep.
yeah, and that's the Day of Atonement.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the day before that, which is, I believe, Yom Erev or Erev Kippur. There's a Day of Atonement where you ask for forgiveness from God.
Mm-hmm.
But the day before that is a Day of Atonement where you have to ask forgiveness of others.
Okay.
And so in order to ask for forgiveness from God, you first need to ask for forgiveness from the people in your life. You need forgiveness from others. Which I think is an important thing. It's a good idea of you can't get forgiveness from the universe or whatever your concept of God is until you actually make the effort to fix things in reality. Try and be a peacemaker.
Right. You're right. It is Erev Yom Kippur.
Erev Yom Kippur.
Yeah. Erev just means Eve.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was murder. Don't just not commit adultery. Don't even look at a woman lustfully.
What?
Yeah. If your quote, if your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell.
Okay. I have real issues with stuff like this in the Bible because you know what happens when stuff like this is written in the Bible? It's not
people gouge out their eyes.
No, women are forced to wear fucking clothing that makes it so men don't look at them lustfully.
That's fair. Yeah.
I mean,
I don't want to have to gouge out my eyes, so you have to wear
cover your hair and body and face. A lot of people think of it in Muslim religion, but they do it in Judaism and they do it in Catholicism.
And they do it in Christianity, like
nuns
where you're
and where all habits all covered up all the way.
Well, yeah, but even like, in Protestant Christianity, you see people, women having to wear very conservative clothing where they are essentially just entirely covered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's legitimately because like men shouldn't look at women lustfully.
Yeah.
And because they can't help themselves, women are forced to cover themselves up to remove the temptation.
Yeah. And really this is just an unhealthy thing to do where you're trying to repress sexual thoughts and things like that.
Sexual repression always leads to good things.
Right. That doesn't lead to more problems with this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a real problem with stuff like that. I mean, listen, men and women are fucking beautiful. There's a lot of really good looking people out there. And looking at somebody and noticing that they're attractive is not the same as being like, I'd hit that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like looking at art. Like, I'm not going to fuck a painting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I would hope not. It's two-dimensional.
I'm not going to fuck a sculpture.
Yeah.
Is that better for you?
Yeah. I mean, there are people who have.
There are people who have, and that's because of repression.
Yeah.
But like, you can look at something and think that it looks good without also being like, I want to fuck that.
Yeah.
I mean, history dictates that it's harder for men.
Yeah. But nonetheless, maybe that's what he should be trying to fix. Is not.
Yeah.
Yeah, like trying to actually like what bugs me is it's a rule without any like guidance on how to do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Because everyone is going to face this
Right.
at some point in time in their lives. And the law shouldn't be don't look at somebody lustfully. It should
Right.
be like appreciate the beauty that God has given.
Yeah. But, don't put your
Don't
dick
put
in
your
it.
dick in it.
Yeah.
That's the rule. That
Right.
should be the first rule of the Bible.
Don't put your dick in it.
Unless the thing says it's okay. Whatever
Yeah.
the thing it is, it has to say it's okay. Look, don't touch.
Moses comes down from Mount Sinai with the tablet. Commandment 1, don't put your dick in it.
He would have saved a lot of
Yeah.
people's lives had he done that as a commandment.
Don't put your dick in what? It.
Anything.
The big it.
Don't put your dick
If
in
you're
anything.
thinking I should put my dick in that, don't.
I feel like you would need sort of people take things very literally sometimes,
Yeah.
so I think you would need sort of like a unless it said they say it's okay.
Yeah, unless it says it's okay.
So that really just leaves people
Yeah,
and people who say it's okay.
right.
Just early guidelines for consent.
Right. That like how amazing would that have been if God had at any point in the Bible been like, this is what it means to consent to sex.
Yes. Right. The only holy sex is consensual sex.
Right.
The world would
but we
have
never got that.
Oh my God. The world would be a completely different place.
Yeah.
Had that been one of the early rules. Just, don't look at things lustfully.
Yeah.
If you do, just,
Gouge out your own eye.
gouge your fucking eye out.
Yeah.
And then people will know that you looked at something lustfully.
Right.
What if you look at something lustfully with your other eye? You lose both eyes?
Yep.
I would just never leave the house.
Better than going to hell.
I would just never leave the house.
If hell exists, it's better than going to hell.
Being blind?
Yeah. The next one, divorce. Unless you're divorcing because of sexual immorality, you're committing adultery. So,
Oh.
yeah.
That's something. So it's not in all of them, but I think in Catholicism, they believe that, which is why they do the annulment process.
Yes.
But they do that you're not allowed to get divorced as Jehovah's Witness unless there is
Sexual
Impropriety,
impropriety.
right.
Yeah. I don't think there is any annulment in Jehovah's Witnesses. So, yeah, you just can't do it unless there's sexual impropriety. My grandma, famously within our family, divorced my grandfather when I was like a little kid, and never remarried, much to the chagrin of my grandfather because he never could get remarried either.
Oh.
She forced him to live the rest of his life in celibacy, as far as we know.
But he's still a Jehovah's Witness.
Because he's still a Jehovah's Witness. Because by not remarrying, he was never able to get with any other ladies.
Ah, good for her.
Yeah, yeah,
What a real sort of underhanded trick to play.
yeah. I know.
I love it.
Yeah. So,
oh my gosh.
yeah. Don't swear on anything. Just let your word be your word. Quote, all you need is simply say yes or no. Anything beyond that comes from the evil one.
Oh, they make us swear on Bibles in court.
I know. Court, and if you're becoming president,
Yeah.
technically the rule isn't that you need to swear on a Bible, but
on your holy book.
But you do,
Yeah.
but people do swear on Bibles and stuff like that. Yeah, it's this weird thing that nobody pays attention to that.
Right. Even saying like I swear on my child's life.
Yeah.
That's not. You should. I should
Nothing-
just be able to say this is what I'm saying
Yeah.
and this is true.
Right. When you give to the needy, don't do it to be recognized. So any charitable giving you do, don't do it to be recognized. Keep your giving secret.
Yes,
Otherwise, you've already earned your reward.
I agree.
Yeah,
I actually 100% agree with that.
I know.
100%.
It should be about being a good person.
Yep.
It shouldn't be about having other people think
Right.
you're a good person.
Right. There's a lot of people who give, and that information is easily found out
Yeah.
because you have to, with your taxes and stuff like that, and it's public record. But, somebody who's running around who's like, I donated this much money to this place.
Yeah.
Like, okay, good for you,
Yeah.
I guess.
Right.
Like, giving is not supposed to be selfish, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that.
Pray in private, not to be seen as pious. Quote, when you pray, do not keep babbling like pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. which I think is kind of funny.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people pray in public all the time.
People, yeah, they absolutely do.
Well,
I mean,
churches?
not only at churches, but when you watch church on TV,
Yeah.
and they're praying very publicly and stuff. Yeah, nobody follows this.
And listen, when Catholics do the rosary,
Yeah.
like that is on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, where you're like, if you're doing penance for a sin and they tell you to do 20 Hail Marys or something like that, yeah, you're just repeating it over and over again and stuff. You're babbling like a pagan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh. Gosh.
It's interesting. Like, this is the stuff that, like, you can totally see the validity of it, just like the charitable giving. Like, yeah, if this is like a personal thing for you and everything, if prayer is supposed to be this personal connection with God,
right?
It should be something that's just between you and God.
I would love it if it was that.
I know. I can't remember where it is in the Gospels, but at some point they talk about how Pharisees would fast and they would like tear their own clothes and they would make this big deal out of being like, so pious and everything. And everybody would feel for them and be like, oh, aren't they great for being so pious and all that stuff? And obviously the same message there where it's like they've already earned their reward for this and everything.
I've always thought like pious has been used as a compliment.
Yeah.
Like my whole life, but it's saying so as not to appear pious.
I think pious has just kind of become like there's a negative connotation to it where it's like it doesn't sound like you're being genuinely believe, you want to be seen as believing.
Here's the dictionary definition of pious: devoutly religious.
Yeah.
But it also says making a hypocritical display of virtue, or this one is pious of hope, sincere but unlikely to be fulfilled. So like if you are sincere about something that you say, but you're unlikely to actually follow through, I guess. Yeah, if religion was personal, then I think I would feel differently about most people who practice religion. But again, hearing all this stuff just makes me more angry at the idea of religion because it was set up
because
for
nobody's
them.
actually practicing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was set up for them to follow these things. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
Just kind of skipped over that shit, didn't they?
Right. Couple random things from Luke. Do not judge and you will not be judged. Forgive and you will be forgiven. Why would you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye when you yourself fail to see the plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your
people
brother's
in
eye.
glass houses shouldn't throw stones, basically, right?
Yeah. Jesus never said that because I don't think they had glass yet.
No,
they
I don't
probably
think
did
so.
have glass, but
not
didn't
yet,
have
not glass houses.
No.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's also fair. It's like, look at yourself before judging other people.
Yeah, which is interesting because I always took that to mean like you just shouldn't judge at all, which really the first excerpt there, do not judge and you will not be judged, does
By
say.
who? Because you could not judge somebody and people will still judge you.
Well, yeah, but you won't be judged by God. There's kind of this theme to it where it's like the amount of judging you do will be directly corresponding. Yeah.
Oh, so if you don't judge anybody, you're just going to fly through that heaven line.
Yeah.
Not even look into your history.
Right. No tree bears bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. Each tree is recognized by its own fruit. People do not pick figs from thorn bushes or grapes from briars. So this is a really weird verse, but Matthew's version adds a little before and after this that gives some more context. Before it says, watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. And afterwards it says, thus, by their fruit, you will recognize them. What I think it's saying is judge people like by what comes out of what they do.
Not how they do it.
Yeah, not necessarily how they do it and stuff like that, but like really look at like.
So don't judge a person because they're an atheist.
Right.
Judge them by what they do with their life.
Kind of like, are they still a good person and things like that? Yeah.
But what did it say? Trees?
No good tree bears bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit.
I don't know.
So good people will have good things happen because
They're
of them
good
being
people.
good.
Okay.
Bad people will have caused bad things to happen.
Gotcha.
I think is kind of what it's saying.
Okay. They're not talking about children.
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's
there have been some good
yeah.
trees that have
Depends on how
bad fruit.
depends on how you want to interpret this though. Maybe that is what it mean he was saying, and he's wrong.
Right.
Yeah, there are good parents out there who have created bad kids and bad parents who have created good kids. Yeah. True and false disciples, Matthew 7 and Luke 13. Matthew's version says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? And in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers.
Wait, what?
So just because you claim to be a Christian doesn't mean you actually are adhering to what it means to be a Christian.
Yeah, the fucking truth.
Yeah. So many will say to me, like, didn't we prophesy in your name, drive out demons and everything?
I see.
And Jesus is like, I'm going to be like, bitch, I don't know you.
Yeah, there's a lot of priests out there who fall under that category.
Priests, pastors, yeah. Luke's version of this is a little bit different. Then Jesus went through the towns and villages, teaching as he made his way through Jerusalem. Someone asked him, Lord, are only a few people going to be saved? He said to them, make every effort to enter through the narrow door, because many, I tell you, will try to enter and will not be able to. Once the owner of the house gets up and closes the door, you will stand outside knocking and pleading, Sir, open the door for us. But he will answer, I don't know you or where you come from. Such a weird analogy. Then you will say, we ate and drank with you, and you taught in our streets. But he will reply, I don't know you or where you come from. Away from me, you evildoers. There will be weeping there and gnashing of teeth.
Lots of gnashing of teeth.
Yeah. When you see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and all the prophets of the kingdom in the kingdom of God, but you yourselves thrown out. People will come from the east and west and north and south, and they will take their places at the feast in the kingdom of God. Indeed, there are those who are last who will be first, and first who will be last. And that is the end of the Sermon on the Mount.
Okay. There's a lot going on in this sermon.
Yeah. So anyway, some Christians just aren't going to be able to make it. Like that, Luke's version is very fucking pessimistic.
Yeah.
Because it's very much like you can do almost everything right, but God's only got about 100 spots. And he's not going to. That's kind of what I got from it, is that God is only going to allow so many people in.
It's a narrow door. From that at all.
It's a narrow door.
I just thought that meant that the narrow door meant not necessarily only a certain amount of people in, but like
it's high standards.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's high standards and all that stuff.
High standards in a way that I don't think that it doesn't sound unattainable. I mean, when you think about the nature of humans, yes, it can be a little unattainable because there is something built into our DNAs to be self-protective. And so then you have to fight against that to also to give away all your money, right? Is a perfect example. I do charitable giving, but would I put myself in a position where I wouldn't be able to pay my bills because I'm giving to people less fortunate than me? No. I wouldn't. So, someone could want to do the best, but also has this need to make sure that they don't die. So it can be a little unattainable, but by all the standards put out by Jesus in this sermon on the level place or the mountain or whatever, wherever he was at, hardly anyone is getting into heaven.
Right.
And to me, that's basically what he's saying.
Yeah.
It was it's
kind of like The Good Place,
right?
Where, it turns out that nobody is getting actually into The Good Place
because the standards are so high.
Spoiler alert! It's been out for a little while.
It has been, yeah.
Linz, it is terrifying how many people are plagued by demonic presences within their own home without even knowing about it.
That's right. And so many of them come from your kids.
Like 90% of my problems, I blame the public schools.
Well, that's why there's Saul's Exorcism and Demon Control Jr. We all know and love our longtime sponsors, Saul's Exorcism and Demon Control.
Of course, they help me exorcise my demon of annoying neighbors who catch you when you're taking out the trash and talk to you for over a half hour about their hemorrhoids or kids. But how is this different?
Saul's Exorcism and Demon Control Jr. is a team dedicated to flushing out those pesky demons cursing your kids. Listen to these real customer testimonials. From Albert in Alabama. My daughter refused to get married and have children until she went to college and had a career of her own. We contacted Saul's Demon Control. They successfully drove out that demon of independence and our daughter with it.
And here's Cletus from Kentucky. Our son was getting real uppity, asking questions like, if God is perfect and he intended to create perfect human beings, how did he mess that up? Crap normal 10-year-olds don't say. We got Saul's demon folks down here, and they smacked that demon of critical thinking right out of him. Now he shuts the fuck up like a good boy.
What a good dad.
I know, warms the cockles.
And of course, Saul's Junior team specializes in cases of puberty demons. Stop those sexual thoughts before they even start to make sure your child grows up normal.
Now, some exorcisms leave kids unwilling to talk to their parents afterward.
That's a demon!
Call Saul's team back in to set those bastards straight.
Use promo code BSFA at checkout to save 10% more of your child's soul.
Saul's Exorcism and Demon Control Jr. is only licensed in the continental United States, the only country doing more about demon possession than mass shootings. So anyway, that was the Sermon on the Mount. We've got a couple other stories I wanted to get through. Faith of the Centurion. We talked about this. You remember this.
This is my favorite story.
Yeah. So this is Matthew 8, 5 through 13, Luke 7, 1 through 10. Luke's version, Jesus is in Capernaum, which he's been in a few times now. There's a servant of a centurion who is sick and about to die. A centurion is a Roman soldier who is, as I understand it, if I remember correctly, is in charge of like 100 men.
Okay.
You know, so a century
right.
is a centurion.
Right.
The centurion sends some Jewish leaders to plead with Jesus to heal his servant. The Jewish leaders do. They go find Jesus and talk to him about it. They tell Jesus that the centurion loves their nation and has helped build their synagogue. So very involved with the Jewish people in the area and everything. Good guy, as opposed to a lot of Roman soldiers. So Jesus goes with them. The centurion then sends people to Jesus saying not to trouble himself with coming. He's unworthy of having Jesus under his roof, which is why he didn't come and ask himself. Just say the word and I know my servant will be healed. And then it says, quote, when Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him and turning to the crowd following him, he said, I tell you, I have not found such great faith even in Israel. Then the men who had been sent returned to the house and found the servant well. So that was Luke's version.
Okay.
Matthew's version, the centurion just comes to Jesus himself and asks Jesus. Jesus asks if he can come heal his servant. The centurion basically says the same thing as Luke's version, doesn't deserve to have Jesus under his roof and all that stuff. And then it says, quote, when Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him and turning to the crowd following him, he said, I tell you, I have not found such great faith even in Israel. Then the men who had been sent returned to the house and found the servant well. So very similar ending, but then it's just kind of interesting, the differences in the details there. But
yeah, the thing they don't kind of say or that you didn't pull out of this was that he's not Jewish.
The centurion?
Right.
Yeah, Roman. Yeah,
right.
He's Roman.
And it doesn't mention that he has, I mean, obviously, I don't think Christianity was not a thing yet. Right.
Well, when Jesus was.
Right.
No, I mean, he was inventing it.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So he would have been, if anything, pagan, I guess.
The Roman?
Yeah.
Yeah, most likely would have been
Right.
pagan.
Which paganism is just anything that's not.
It's just believing in multiple gods,
Yeah,
really,
right.
ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of tied it to like witchcraft and Wiccanism and
Yeah.
things like that, and like the European sort of wild religions.
Yeah. But really, ultimately, like if you were
Greeks
were pagans. Yeah, because they had a pantheon of gods they
right,
believed in.
right. So I've ran into a lot of people in my life who judge other people based on how they choose to worship or
Okay.
not.
Yeah.
I would never judge somebody because they choose to be religious or things like that, I guess is my point. And there are plenty of religious people out there who do.
Yeah.
And it's super irritating because I feel like there's a ton of people out there who I've been judged a bunch because I'm an atheist.
Yeah.
And it makes me sad that there's a ton of people out there that think that I would just burn in hell.
Yeah.
Even though I probably live a better life than they do.
Yeah. A more forgiving, a more loving life
Yeah.
than they probably do.
Right.
Yeah.
So I like this story and I like pointing it out to people
Yeah.
that Jesus didn't necessarily just look at what specific religion you were.
Right.
He was looking at the strength of your character.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is what everyone should do.
Right. So John actually also has a version of this. This is John 4:43 through 54. This comes right after the story of the Samaritan woman, but it's interesting differences. So Jesus arrives in Cana in Galilee. The writer specifically calls out that this is where he turned water into wine.
Okay.
That same town. So not Capernaum.
Okay.
You know? There's a, quote, certain royal official, unquote. So not a Roman official, a royal official, whose son is sick in Capernaum. Okay. And then this official hears that Jesus is in Galilee and travels to meet him. He begs Jesus to save his son. Unless you people see signs and wonders, Jesus told him, you will never believe. Asshole. You know,
That's kind of a dick thing to say.
yeah. Again, he begs Jesus to come and save his son. Jesus says that his son will live, and the official just takes Jesus' word for it and leaves. Servants come while he's traveling back and tell him that his son was healed, and it happened at the exact time that Jesus, he was talking to Jesus. So
yeah, they were able to pinpoint that it was the exact same time.
yeah, they actually specifically say it was 11 a.m. in the
Right.
Bible.
Okay.
It was like 11 o'clock in the morning.
He doesn't turn to the crowd after that and say, this man is more full of faith than I've seen.
Nothing like that.
Well, that's not
I know. It's a very different story.
Yeah.
It's a very different story. There's another one, Luke 7:11 through 17, where Jesus raises a widow's son. Jesus goes to this town called Nain. There's a large crowd with him. As he approaches the gate, a dead person is being carried out, and he's the only son of his widow mother. Jesus tells her, don't cry. He tells the son to get up, and he sits up and he starts talking right then and there. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think that's probably what they said. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. We all know about Lazarus, right?
Yeah,
We all know about Jesus
right.
in terms of people who have come back from the dead. How come you don't hear about this one a lot?
I don't know. I think it wasn't like explicitly that he raised from the dead. I think if I remember correctly, he said something along the lines of he was sleeping or something like that. But it's kind of accepted that he raised him from the dead. Lazarus is interesting, though. His story is just more tied to Jesus because Jesus interacts with Lazarus and his sisters more. So
Right.
I think he's just more prevalent. We don't even get this kid's name.
Yeah.
And but since you bring it up, Lazarus, I did realize it was only in the book of John, like the story of Lazarus.
Mhm.
It would not surprise me if since this is only in the book of Luke, if this is his take on Jesus resurrecting somebody.
Oh.
You know, like
It's
maybe
much
John.
less bombastic.
Yeah, but maybe John whoever wrote John read the Luke story and was like, oh, let's embellish on this, you know?
Yeah. Do you think that Jesus raised this boy from the dead and realized he made a huge mistake?
I don't know. Why?
Because, well,
And that boy was Hitler.
no. I mean, there's that.
Yeah.
But no. So listen, if I was a mother whose child had died,
Yeah.
and I heard about Jesus bringing back this boy to life, maybe even in the same town as me.
But
then
all of a sudden everybody wants him to raise
Yeah.
people from the dead.
Right.
Yeah.
It would be a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And like, who do you choose? Like,
How do you choose who lives and who dies?
Right.
Yeah.
you can't.
Welcome
just,
to being God.
You can't just bring everybody back to life.
Right.
Right. I mean, also, like, obviously nowadays, and even back then, I would hope there were some fucking people out there who would realize, like, if somebody's been dead long enough, like their brain deterioration and like their internal organ deterioration,
Yeah.
you should not bring them back to life.
Right.
You would literally have to heal all of that shit in their body too, which maybe, I mean, Jesus is magic. So maybe that's also what he did.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a zombie running around, but
Right.
really more than anything, it's like, how is this the only one? How are there not other mothers who have insisted upon their children being risen from the dead?
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Mothers can be very persistent about their children.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Like, you would think that, I mean, they do talk about crowds gathering all around him all the time and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But yeah, you raise somebody from the dead, you're going to get attention not just from like random people. Like, you're going to get attention from the rich.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Uh-huh.
The rich will try and pay you to,
Right.
to raise people from the dead.
Right. And I guess that's kind of what makes this the Bible and not just like a storybook
Yeah.
is that
It doesn't have to make sense.
it's not well written.
Yeah.
Because if this
You
were
don't
like,
actually have to think through those
Yeah.
implications.
because
Yeah.
if this were a story that I wanted to read, I would want to see that storyline play out.
Yeah.
It would be more realistic for Jesus to be tempted by rich people wanting to pay him a shit ton of money to raise their children from the dead than fucking Satan trying to give him land that he already owns
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
desert.
Right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's where my head went with that.
Right. The last story I wanted to cover is an interesting one. It's the anointing of Jesus. I'm going to be honest. It's a mundane story.
Okay.
But
All right.
all four gospels have this story, which is not a very common thing, actually, for all four gospels to have the same stories.
Okay.
There's only a handful.
So anointing
Throughout
is
the-
important.
Apparently, this story has some importance to it, but it's pretty mundane. The differences between them, though, is pretty interesting.
Okay.
So first, we'll go through Luke, Matthew, and Mark. This is Matthew 26, 1 through 13, Mark 14, 3 through 9, and Luke 7, 36 through 50. So Luke's version, last we knew, Jesus was in Nain, like we just talked about.
Right.
So we don't know for sure if he's still in Nain in the story, but
That's where he resurrected the
That boy.
Okay.
Yep.
I've already lost track of
I know.
the story.
It's chapter 7 out of 24 in Luke. So like it's still early in the ministry, right?
Before the big T.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before the big T, the lowercase
The
t.
big lowercase t.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's at a Pharisee named Simon's house.
Okay.
Jesus reclines at a table when a woman, quote, who lived a sinful life, unquote, came in.
Whore.
Came in with an alabaster jar of perfume. She began weeping on his feet and wiped them with her hair. Then she kissed them and poured the perfume on them. Simon is offended by this, that Jesus would let a sinful woman touch him. And then Jesus makes a point that if you forgave somebody a large loan and forgave somebody else of a small loan, the person forgiven of the larger loan would love you more. And then he goes about forgiving the woman of her sins, you know.
I see. So if you forgive somebody of their big sins, they'll love you more than the people you're forgiving of their small sins.
Right.
Isn't this what Mary Magdalene does to him when he's on the cross?
That's a really, not when he's on the cross, but that's a really good point, and I want to get to that.
Okay.
So put a pin in that.
All right.
So then the Mark and Matthew version, they're almost identical.
Okay.
Jesus is in Bethany, so different. Well, again, we don't really know for sure what town he is in Luke, but specifically in Mark and Matthew, he's in Bethany. It's 2 days before Passover. It starts off in Matthew with this. When Jesus had finished saying all these things, whatever he had just said, he said to his disciples, "As you know, the Passover is 2 days away, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified." Then the priests, the chief priests, and the elders of the people assembled in the palace of the high priest, whose name was Caiaphas, and they schemed to arrest Jesus secretly and kill him, but not during the festival, they said, or there may be a riot among the people. So this in Mark and Matthew is literally right before he's about to be crucified.
Right.
In Luke,
there's a lot of time.
it's way earlier.
Yeah.
Way earlier. And since we're following the timeline of Luke, we're covering this well before we're going to get to the crucifixion and everything. So just important to kind of call that out.
Mm-hmm.
In Matthew and Mark's version, he's at Simon the leper's house, which I can't imagine a Pharisee would have been a leper. So in the last one, he was at a Pharisee named Simon's house.
Right.
And this one, he's at
You
a
don't think a
leper name.
Pharisee can get leprosy?
I think he can get leprosy, but then he wouldn't be allowed to be a Pharisee anymore because you would be unclean.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
So Jesus is reclining at a table. They specifically call that out.
That's funny. I picture him like with his feet up on the table, like just laid back.
I think it was like more like tables were short,
Okay.
you know, and so you would lay on cushions by the table, you know.
Oh, yes. Yes. And
Much
you're
more
just
like that.
lounging, like there's a hookah in the middle.
Something like that, yeah. A woman, and it doesn't say anything about her being sinful, comes in. My voice cracked.
I know you're hitting puberty.
Yeah.
Finally.
I knew it had to happen eventually. I didn't know it happened live on our podcast. This is just going to be the rest of the episode, though.
God. Oh, dude.
Hopefully I get through puberty by the next episode. Yeah, I need to get some Stridex and contact lenses. What else do people do when they're in puberty?
And you just masturbate a lot. Don't do that on the mic, though.
On the mic. Anyway, so this woman comes in, doesn't say anything about her being sinful or anything like that. And we also don't know who it is. She comes in with an alabaster jar of perfume made of nard.
Nard.
So that's, I think the full name is spikenard, and it's an essential oil from China and India.
Okay. Nard, N-A-R-D.
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask about it, so I Wikipedia'd it.
Thanks.
She pours perfume on his head. Folks there start asking why she's wasting the perfume. She could have sold it for more than a year's worth of wages and given the money to the poor. According to Mark, Jesus says this, "Leave her alone," said Jesus. "Why are you bothering her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, and you can help them anytime you want, but you will not always have me." She did what she could. She poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare for my burial. Truly, I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. And yet they did not give us a name for this woman.
Sounds like Mary Magdalene, though.
Well, we'll get to that.
All right. The pin's still there.
The pin is still there.
It's really funny that he's kind of all over the place in what he expects from people.
I know. The poor will always be with you.
Yeah.
You can help them whenever you want.
Right.
Yeah. But this year's worth of wages you can just pour on me now because I'm about to die.
On my feet, on his or on his whole body. Did she just?
Oh no, this one was on his head. Was on his head.
Oh. Okay.
She poured the
perfume on his head.
The oil on his head.
Right. Yeah.
Which is like,
I would have left with a real migraine headache.
Yeah. Well, also oil, like pouring oil on your head doesn't sound pleasant either. Like then your head's all oily. But
yeah, I mean he's about to die, so I don't think he cares.
I guess. Yeah. And then we get the story according to John. This is John 12, 1-8. Jesus is in Bethany, same town then as the Matthew and Mark version. It's 6 days before Passover.
Okay.
He's at the house of Lazarus and his sisters, Martha and Mary. And this is actually happening after he raises Lazarus from the dead. Spoiler alert. Mary takes out a pint of nard and pours it on Jesus's feet, then wiped his feet with her hair. Then it says, quote, but one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot,
Yep.
who was later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it.
Wow.
It's an interesting little
Like they threw that in there.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
He's not protesting because he's a good guy, you guys. They really set him up to be the villain for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to me, like, there's a lot of anti-Semitism to this kind of stuff too, because it's Judas, which he's often portrayed as like an evil Jewish person.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got this where he's a thief stealing the money from the bag and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff to this. Like,
even if the intention upon the writers wasn't like necessarily to demonize Jewish people, it is 100% used in like anti-Semitic language.
yeah, not all of the writers did. Like Matthew, classically was writing for a Jewish audience, but John, I think, is much more anti-Semitic.
He's the one that wrote his last, right? Who wrote,
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. It was about 100 years after.
Yeah.
It was about 100 AD when the book of John was likely written. So Jesus says, "Leave her alone." Jesus replied, "It was intended that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me." Meanwhile, a large crowd of Jews found out that Jesus was there, and they came not only because of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to kill Lazarus as well.
Yeah.
For on account of him, many of the Jews were going over to Jesus and believing in him, which is interesting because I totally forgot about that. But that was in the Last Temptation of Christ where they killed Lazarus.
Yeah, it was Paul specifically.
Yeah, it was Paul.
It was before
yeah.
it was Paul. It was Saul.
Saul, yeah.
Not Paul. So, but that's not Mary Magdalene.
So that's the interesting thing. I looked into it. I was like, because I always thought it was Mary Magdalene too.
But they must have just said Mary and I assumed it was Mary Magdalene.
Well, so they don't know. Nobody actually knows. Nobody knows if Mary Magdalene was the sister of Lazarus and Martha. A lot of people, like, I think
Is that why they think
Last
she's a
Temptation.
whore? Because of the combination of the stories?
Because of the combination of these stories. That's it.
Wow.
That's the entire reason
Wow.
why they think Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. It's because of that other
in one
story.
they call her Mary, and the other story they say a sinful woman.
And the sinful woman one is the one that's like early on in his, it's long before he's going to be executed and everything. It's in Luke, and it's like chapter 7 of 24, so like they are just decided that no, they're the same person. They've also decided that Mary, the sister of Lazarus, is Mary Magdalene. Mm-hmm. And so, it all gets conflated together, and it just ends up with Mary Magdalene
being a prostitute. Obviously, she comes up later in the story, and that's how we know her name is Mary Magdalene specifically.
Yeah.
Right? Like when during the crucifixion, they must call out her full name.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, it's when we get to the crucifixion and stuff that I think it's where Mary the Magdalene first pops up, and it mentions.
Oh, she's Mary the Magdalene?
Yeah.
Oh, because they didn't have last names back then, right?
Right.
Okay, so what's a Magdalene?
Technically, he was Jesus the Christ.
Right.
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
I haven't looked that up, but we'll get to it.
there.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's like the Nazarene,
right?
Like where she's from, but I don't know. I think it talks about him driving out demons from her or something along those lines, forgiving her of a bunch of sins, something like that. But that's all we really know about Mary Magdalene.
Okay.
And then, like I said, they just assume that this is the same Mary.
Oh, that's interesting because, a lot of the Mary Magdalene story hinges on her being a whore.
Right.
And it's all just a presumption on two separate stories that everyone's just smushed together in their minds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Poor Mary.
I know. And it's
Also,
so
did they only have one name for women back
I
then?
know, because there's her and then there's Mary, Jesus' mom. Yeah.
Well, and let's take the presumption that this Mary and Mary Magdalene are the same person. Then that's 3 Marys.
Are not the same person.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, let's take out the presumption that they are.
Right.
And that they're 2 separate people.
Yeah. It's
So then
3
there would be
Marys.
3 Marys.
Yeah.
And a Martha.
Which
So
they
then you get into the whole Batman, Superman thing.
right. Oh my God, I'd love to see that movie. Batman versus Superman versus Jesus.
Somebody wrote it somewhere
all
already.
of our moms are Martha? I know, the name thing is weird. But then, there's 2 Judases in his group.
Yeah. There's a bunch
I think. And
it's probably why he kept renaming people, is that there were too many similar names. There were only like 10 names back then.
Yeah.
So it was,
but ultimately, I really do think all that stuff comes down to the fact that these were all just oral stories being passed around. And so these details didn't always match up.
right.
And so they were just trying to kind of make some sense out of it. So you end up with 2 Judases in this group. You end up with Levi and Matthew being conflated as the same person. You end up with Mary, the sister of Lazarus, being conflated with Mary Magdalene, being conflated with this sinful woman, which we don't even know if she was a prostitute. She could have just been committing tax fraud.
Yeah.
I
mean, she could have been an adulterer.
Right.
Right.
There's a lot of things.
There's a lot of different, but everyone, because she's a woman,
Yeah.
the assumption is that she was a whore.
Right.
Because that's the only sin women committed back then.
Right.
Was whoredom.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the thing is like, and I think this is a really good example of how this is obviously not real. And even if there was some seed of truth to the story, we have no idea what the actual details are,
Right.
who was involved, what was actually said, because this was passed around from
Person to
person, orally and stuff like that. And then it was eventually written down and probably changed over time too, before it became canon. We have the third version of each of these, the third manuscript of each of these. We don't have any of the original manuscripts.
So does no one wash Jesus's feet while he's on the cross?
I don't remember anybody washing his feet on the
Because
cross.
that's when I thought it happened.
I don't
Does his
recall
mama
that.
come and wash his feet?
Somebody gives him water while he's on the cross. Like they fill a sponge with water and they give him water. I remember that.
Okay.
But they totally might. And I don't remember.
It could just be me hearing.
Doesn't seem like there would be a lot of a point to it.
Well, why did they wash his feet here?
That's also a good point.
What the fuck was the
yeah.
point of that?
Yeah, that's fair.
And
Yeah.
not even just wash his feet. Like, first of all, wash his feet with their hair.
Yeah. So
Which
yeah.
I have a real issue with, because hair is not meant as a scrubbing tool.
Right.
But also, like, one of them, they just poured it on his head.
Yeah.
Like, that to me makes more sense. Pouring it on the head. That's what they do when with the babies in the church, when they,
Right.
what do you call
That's
it?
actually like anointing. Well, that was baptism.
Baptism.
But yeah, that's like anointing. You often do that with oil on the forehead and stuff.
It's not baptism. It's so in the Catholic Church, you have to get,
Catechism?
yes.
Is that it?
Yes. And I think when you're done with that, with the classes, and you get confirmed, I think is what they call
your
it.
confirmation. Yeah.
I think they do something with
where they
the
anoint
anointing of the oil.
you.
Yeah.
They do a cross in oil.
And then that's when you can take communion.
Yeah. So what I do remember from some sermon a long time ago when it comes to this story is that they would explain, like, you would be walking a lot in sandals back then. So your feet are going to be gross and dirty and stuff like that. And the whole point of this is she's cleaning his feet, which probably had manure and shit on it, from donkeys or whatever. And it's a gross thing to do. Jesus had washed, I don't know if we got to this part yet, but Jesus would wash people's feet, and it would be a sign of respect to them and stuff like that. So
if Quentin Tarantino directed a movie about the life of Jesus, it would just all be about washing feet.
That would be the entirety of it. It's just the feet stuff.
Okay. I guess that makes sense. It's just and oil. I mean, I use oil to wash my face. It is cleansing. It does get rid of dirt very easily.
Yeah.
So that makes sense too.
And if you were Jesus, you could heal the headache you would get, the migraine.
Yeah. And I don't know what this stuff smells like. I mean,
Nard.
Things aren't as heavily perfumed back then. Well, actually, I'm going to take that back. I think things were more heavily perfumed back then because nobody was actually bathing consistently. So they would use perfumes to cover up the stink of things. Oh, God. I'm so glad I don't live back then.
Yeah.
For many reasons, including that I would not, I would have been killed already as a woman, burned as a witch, likely.
Yeah.
But also the migraines.
All those horrible smells.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that's it.
Cool.
For this week.
Fun stuff, man. Learned some things.
Busting through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. They all live miserably ever after. Thank you so much for checking out our podcast. Help us spread the good news and keep this going by sharing the show with a friend or leaving a review to help others find us. And we'll talk to you next time.